Welcome to Acenti's Workshops to Express Creativity, Engaging Canadian Seniors. This is Acenti's second series of workshops, a project made possible through the financial support of Employment and Social Development Canada as part of the New Horizons Seniors Program. My name is Lecha Canton and I'm the founding editor-in-chief of Acenti magazine. Today, Acenti is pleased to present Workshop 5, Crossing the Line, Writing About Coercive Control with Heather McGuire. And it's my pleasure to introduce our workshop leader. Heather McGuire is a short story writer and the author of the forthcoming memoir titled Living as a Ghost in My Marriage. Welcome, Heather. The microphone is yours.
Thank you, Lecha, for that very kind introduction. I'm very excited to be here this afternoon with everybody. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm a victim survivor of domestic abuse. And so because of my experience, it's very important for me to share my knowledge of domestic abuse and specifically coercive control. I'll get into more details a little bit later about that, but a quick definition is that it's a continuous pattern of mistreatment that occurs over time. I'm not a psychologist or a social worker, but I'm somebody who has learned about this topic through my experience, research, and writing. For the presentation, I'm going to refer to the victim using the feminine pronoun because that's based on my experience. And also the literature is written that way as well. But having said that, I know that both men and women can be victims of domestic abuse. Okay, so I'm going to start sharing my screen. Okay, so I'm going to tell you a little bit about me. I was married to my abuser, who I'm going to call James for the purpose of this presentation, but that's not his name. I was married to James for almost 30 years, and I didn't realize the mistreatment I was receiving was, in fact, domestic abuse. He never used physical violence. My wake-up call came in the spring of 2016 when he called me an asshole. That was the first time he had been so aggressive with his name calling. And that at that point in time, I realized I needed help to understand what was happening in my marriage. So I found a psychologist who suggested different strategies or things I could do with James to try and fix our marriage. But he wasn't interested. So then my psychologist suggested that I try working on things that made me happy. So I signed up for like a yoga course, meditation, going out in the evening with my friends. And all these things were really difficult because the more I tried to do things that made me happy, the more angry and aggressive James became with me. And at the same time, I was researching, books on how to communicate better in your marriage or, different things to try and improve what was happening between us. But I didn't find anything. But then by chance, I came across a book titled The Verbally Abusive Relationship by Patricia Evans. And that book gave me the answers that I was looking for. It was at that time that I realized that I was the victim of abuse. And that discovery was shocking to me because I thought, how can I not know this? And so once I had the terminology of abuse, I changed my research. And then I discovered that typically abusers don't change. They don't want to change. So for many months, I agonized about whether to stay or leave the marriage because I thought, oh, is it really that bad? He's not hitting me. But then I realized that I really needed to leave. So in August of 2017, on a Saturday morning when James was out, I packed up as many personal belongings as I could, and then I left. I'm working on my memoir, Living as a Ghost in My Marriage. I'm trying to write a book that would have helped me when I was looking and trying to figure out what was happening. in my marriage. And I've also published 2 creative nonfiction short stories, one of which is published at achenti.ca. Okay, so in terms of the workshop today, I hope that after the workshop, you will have an understanding of coercive control. You will be able to identify warning signs in behavior, understand expressing boundaries, and recognize your reactions and feelings. Okay, so I have a couple of questions for you, and this is just for you to try and trigger any memories that you may have about an encounter with difficult behavior. So I'm just going to go read through the list and take a mental note if you've ever felt that you've encountered anything along these lines. So have you, or perhaps someone you know, ever been called names such as stupid, bitch, or cheater? Have you ever been told you don't have a sense of humor when telling someone their comment wasn't funny? Being given the silent treatment? Not had access to money from your partner, or maybe you need to justify the expenditures. Maybe you have a difficult time trying to have conversations with your partner about topics that are of concern to you. Or maybe you've encountered a controlling or difficult colleague, friend, or parent who makes unreasonable demands, yells, speaks aggressively, or condescendingly towards you. Now, if you've had just one of these over a long period of time, it might not be anything. But if you've had several of these over a period of time, it could possibly be a sign that you are experiencing coercive control. And all of those happened to me during my marriage. Okay, so I have a short video. It's under 2 minutes. It's about 2 friends, Kate and Emma. The video is from the UK. And so you might have trouble with their accents and the video lags, but I'm hoping that we'll be able to get something out of it. So I'm just going to pull up the video. Just give me a second.
Oh, oh God, it's so good to see you too. I'm so sorry it's been so long. I don't know, I always think has been on, but don't worry about it. It's great to see you. It's good to see you too. How are you? Good. Excited about tonight? Oh, yeah, I think so. I haven't been out in a while, so I'm feeling a bit nervous, but it's a grand. Up to your old tricks? Is that for tonight? Oh, no, I'm returning that. Mike doesn't like it, so it's money. So how's work going? Yeah, it's good. Just, I don't know, I'm still kind of getting my bearings. In this field, and I'm demanding that Sinead carries me back to the oh my God, remind me to never go to a festival with either of you. I mean, again. Paige, everything okay? Yeah, it's Mike checking up on me. That's so sweet. Oh God, I have to go. Are you sure? I mean, we just got here. It's just that we've had this thing planned for so long, and I completely forgot that it's tomorrow. The girls will be here in a minute. I'm so sorry. I know. I'm so sorry. I'll talk to you again. Okay?
Okay, so was everyone able to see or get a gist from the video? Okay. Okay, so does anybody have any comments, like what did you see happening there? Well, we saw two friends getting together, and they hadn't seen each other in a little while, and they seemed happy, and they were planning an exciting evening, which they both were looking forward to. And then when they got to the club, the bar, it looked like they were having a really good time. And then all of a sudden, Kate received text from her boyfriend asking her to actually demanding that she come home. And so she left the bar where it looked like she was having a good time and left. And so I'm just wondering if any of you have any thoughts about that, or anything strikes you as unusual or not. Okay, well, we'll keep going, and I'll describe more specifically what is coercive control. Okay, so coercive control is a repeated or continuous pattern of mistreatment that occurs over a period of time, and the abuse may not necessarily include physical violence. The abuser chooses to harm the victim. It's not a lot of loss of control, which is what a lot of people think. It's a choice to harm the victim. The purpose of the abusive treatment is to control the victim, to control all aspects of her life, and also to try to prevent her from leaving. The abuse happens very gradually, so that the victim may not even realize that the mistreatment is abusive, because the relationship probably started out in a very normal way. The abuser was attentive and caring and generous, and so everything was fantastic at the beginning. It's a gradual process, which makes it difficult to realize what's happening. And sometimes the abusive tactics may appear to be a sign of caring. So, for example, chauffeuring the victim to appointments, a lot of texting just to check up, just to make sure everything's fine. These things can appear to be caring, but they can also be a sign of control. In my case, when I was home with my two young children, James used to call me every day at 1 o'clock. So I knew that I needed to be there at 1 o'clock to receive his call. But I also thought it was really nice that he's taking time out of his busy day to contact me and chat. But what I noticed was it was more a quiz. He was asking me, who did you see today? What did you do? Where are you going later? Or are you going out? What's happening? Like, it wasn't like a nice conversation. It was more like a quiz. And so, but there again, I didn't realize that at the time. Okay, and so over time, the victim can lose their independence, their confidence, their decision-making abilities, and coercive control is considered domestic abuse. Usually when people think about abuse, they think about the physical hitting, punching, and all those things. But coercive control can be just as dangerous as the physical violence. Evan Stark points out that coercive control is not merely the most prevalent context for women in personal life, it's also the most devastating. Research has been done with women who have been subject to coercive control without any physical violence, and they are reported to have higher incidence of levels of fear, difficulties concentrating, and difficulty sleeping. And any man, woman from any type of background can find themselves in a coercive controlling relationship as well, even in the workplace, friends, family. That type of relationship can exist in any friendship. And the non-physical forms of coercive control are verbal, psychological, financial, and sexual. Some or all of the categories can be present within an abusive relationship. If you have any questions at any time, please don't hesitate to ask. Okay, so now I'm going to go through the 4 types of non-physical abuse. The first one is verbal. This keeps the victim in a state of self-doubt. The victim may find herself always on guard, losing confidence, anxious, or worrying that something is wrong with her. And tactics include name calling. This is the most obvious tactic, and all name calling is considered abusive. Another tactic is forgetting. And this can be like, if I ever said to James, why did you call me a name? Or why did you do something? He would just say, that didn't happen. Like, what are you talking about? And so you start to question your memory a little bit. There's also ordering. And this type of treatment assumes the victim is always available to the abuser. And so examples could be like, get in here, or clean this up, or you're not going out. And it also has a little bit of aggressive tone to it. Threats is another tactic. And that manipulates the partner by bringing up something that she might be afraid of. So he may say something like, you better do that or I'm going to get really angry. Or if you keep doing that, we're going to be headed for a divorce. So things that might put fear into the victim, those are threats. Screaming and shouting, as well as lowering of the voice, are all considered abusive if the intention of the abuser is to intimidate the victim. Okay, so I have a little story about Clark and Ian. And so I'm going to read it. And after, you can let me know if you think there's any abuse going on here. Okay, so one evening after dinner, Clark was in the kitchen cleaning up the dishes, and his boyfriend of 5 years was in the den watching the news. Once the news was over, Clark could hear Ian mumbling to himself and struggling to open the Netflix app. This went on for several minutes. "Get in here," yelled Ian. Clark walked hurriedly to the den. "Get Netflix on the TV," ordered Ian, waving the remote in the air. Clark grabbed the remote. He wasn't exactly sure how to do it, but nevertheless started pressing buttons. "What's taking so long?" complained Ian. "I need to watch my show now." "Don't worry, we'll get it going," said Clark, as calmly as he could. His heart was racing as he tried to figure it out fast. Finally, he found the program that Ian was looking for and gave the remote back to him. He walked back to the kitchen to give himself a few minutes to calm down. Clark was familiar with these types of outbursts, but he never knew when they would happen. It was exciting every time. So would anybody like to let me know if they see any type of abuse in there?
Well, I hear intimidation, maybe not a threat, but certainly intimidation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure, intimidation. And he didn't care what Clark was doing. He wanted him instantly. He didn't have any regard for what he was doing. So yeah. Okay, so let's move on to psychological, which is also known as emotional abuse. The purpose of this type of abuse is to target the victim's value as a person. One of the abuser's objectives is to make the victim feel inferior. And tactics include criticism. So basically, the abuser gives the impression that nothing the victim done is good enough. They don't like the way she cooks, the way she dresses, the way she cleans. There's always a critical comment about something that's going on. And then we have moody behavior. And in the case of an abusive relationship, the abuser's emotions dominate the household. And so if he's in a good mood, people can relax a little bit. But if he's in a bad mood, you're walking on eggshells, wondering what's going to happen, what set him off. So it always makes the environment very uncomfortable. There's also pretending to care. So he might say things like, "Oh, don't leave me home alone. I'll miss you too much." Calls or text when you're at work or at school. They insist on activating the GPS to know where you are just in case something should happen. And and he might accompany the person to all of their appointments. He might do all the shopping, and he might tell her, oh, you don't have to work because I'll take care of you. So all those things look like they're really nice and caring, but they could also be used to be controlling somebody. We also have ignoring opinions of the victim. And in this case, the abuser would not consider the victim's opinion for any household purchases, holidays, raising the kids. They just will ignore any input she might have. And you have lying to make the victim doubt herself. So this is like, let's say you're talking to, let's say I was talking to James and I wanted to discuss something. He might turn around and say, oh, you need to see a psychologist. You've got mental problems, like, you know, lying to you to make you think, well, maybe I do have mental problems. And that also happened to me in regards to if we were discussing something that happened in the past, it seems like I couldn't ever remember correctly what happened. I was always wrong. So eventually I just stopped expressing my opinion. So, and that makes it easier for the abuser. They don't have to deal with anything else. They just do as they want. You can also have the silent treatment, and that can go on for hours, days, or weeks even. And you also have limiting contact with other people. And so, for example, when the victim wants to go out, he might start a fight. He might make her feel guilty for leaving the house alone. And that happened to me a lot too. So eventually I stopped going out in the evening and on weekends. And he might also say, like, when I want to spend time with my sisters, he would tell me they're a bad influence on you. And so all these things happening over a period of time can impact how you behave. Okay, so I have another little story here. This is about Jessica and Ashley. So I'll read it. And if you could let me know if you see anything abusive in this scenario. Okay, so Jessica and Ashley had been living together for several months. Their anniversary was coming up, so they decided to go out for pizza on the weekend to celebrate. On Friday evening, Ashley came home from work and asked Jessica what time they would leave for dinner. I thought we were staying home and having hamburgers, replied Jessica. We made plans for pizza, remember, said Ashley. No, we're having burgers, replied Jessica aggressively. So did I imagine the conversation we had about going out for pizza? You must have. We never had that conversation, said Jessica confidently. Ashley wasn't sure what to think. Jessica seemed so sure. They ended up staying home and having hamburgers, but Ashley was still questioning what she remembered. So does anybody recognize anything here in terms of abuse? We could say lying to make the victim doubt herself. Because
this one's a lot more subtle, you have to admit.
It's very subtle. It's very subtle.
Yeah.
You don't know necessarily unless you've experienced it multiple times,
Right.
You know, because the reason that it's interesting is because Ashley wasn't sure what to think. Jessica seemed so sure. And that's the thing that trips you up, is like the other person seems so sure of something that you don't even have a recollection of, but it's very subtle. And a lot of coercive control can be. So that's why you have to pay attention to the pattern and the repetitiveness of it.
Yeah, Heather, I just wanted to mention that people are writing in the
Oh,
chat.
in the chat. Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, I just want to let you know that not everyone is unmuting to respond.
Okay. Okay. So, okay, let me look at the chat. Oh, gaslighting. Yes, gaslighting. Yes, for sure. Yes. Okay. Making the victim doubt about herself. Yes. Yes. That's perfect. Yeah. Sorry, Alicia, I forgot about the chat. Okay. So we'll continue with the financial abuse. And so this concerns all aspects of the couple's finances. And so it can make the victim dependent on the abuser, meaning she doesn't have an income, or she can be responsible for everything, in which case she might be the only one working, and frequently then she would have to give her paycheck to the abuser for him to manage the money. And tactics for this include keeping the financial information hidden from the partner. Like he might tell her, oh, you don't have to worry about it. It's all under control. I'm managing it fine. Again, forcing the partner to work or preventing the victim from working. And that's what happened in my case. James made me feel guilty for wanting to work after we had children. He told me he wouldn't help with the daycare, anything with the daycare. And at that time, the job that I had, I knew I would have to work late from time to time. So I felt like I had no choice but to quit my job. You also have prohibiting access to funds. So it might mean either an allowance or maybe not even, so difficulty accessing funds, stealing the victim's money or valuables, making her feel guilty for any purchases she might make, or justifying purchases if the person does have access to money. Okay, so I have a little story about Emma and Josh. So I'll read that and then you can let me know your thoughts after. Okay, so Emma was a high-powered executive when she met Josh. She fell head over heels for him. He was charming and paid so much attention to her. They were married within a few months. Shortly after that, Josh took a job transfer to another city. As they were planning to start a family, Emma quit her job and went along with Josh. She became pregnant soon after. Josh's career was taking off and he made more than enough money to support the family. He told Emma that he would manage the finances so she could focus on taking care of the baby. Without any income, Emma saw no reason to keep her credit cards, so she canceled them. Josh did all the errands as well as grocery shopping. He told Emma it was because he wanted her to be well rested. Emma rarely left the house unless she was taking the baby for a walk in the stroller. She didn't even renew her driver's license because Josh told her he would drive her wherever she needed to go. You're my princess, he told her. I'll always take care of you. After several years, Emma realized she had no access to money or transportation. She couldn't shop alone, even if she wanted to leave, she didn't think she could. Okay, so does anybody have any comments about this scenario? Well, this one would be considered financial abuse because he's controlling all the finances. Oh, let me just check the chat. Yes, okay, he's controlling and he's forbidding access to money and pretending to care. Yes, exactly. Yeah, he's making it sound like when he says you're my princess, that sounds really nice, right? Like who doesn't want to hear that you're going to be taken care of? But he's doing it in such a controlling way that she doesn't have any agency anymore about anything. So, and again, it can be hard to see because it could look like he's caring, and he's happy to shop and take care of her. Yes, exactly. Seducing her into becoming dependent, which there again, it happens gradually. You think it's a good thing, but the next thing you know, you don't have access to money. You can't make choices on your own. So yes, exactly. Okay, so, oops. Okay, so the last one is sexual abuse. And hold on. Okay, and the object of sexual abuse is to make the victim feel undesired or to give her the impression that she is just a sexual object. The abuse can be any undesired sexual act, even if the couple is married. No one should ever feel obligated to perform any sexual acts they do not want to. So examples of sexual abuse can include forcing or pressuring an intimate partner to commit sexual acts, unwanted touching and unwanted intercourse, sexual jokes, making fun of the victim's body, and monitoring of undergarments and assisting their partner wear certain clothing. Okay, so this is my last little story here. So I'll read this and then we can discuss. Paula and Hugo had a 12-year-old son who played hockey for a high caliber hockey team. This meant a great deal of practices and games. Hugo helped coach the hockey team, and because of this, wanted his wife to look sexy whenever she was in the stands. He helped Paula pick out her outfits for all hockey-related outings. You seriously think you're going to wear those jeans to the game? Snapped Hugo. It's freezing in the arena in the middle of winter, complained Paula. You know your dress code for the games. Go put on your leather skirt and fishnet stockings, said Hugo. Just this once, let me wear the jeans, pleaded Paula. Look, I'm the coach and I want you to look hot. You're representing the family. Paula stood beside Hugo thinking about what she should do. Come on, I love looking over at you while I'm coaching. It's such a turn on. Fine, I'll go change, conceded Paula. She felt extremely uncomfortable dressing this way for a children's hockey game, but since it made Hugo happy and proud, she went along with his demands. So I don't know if anybody has any comments about that scenario.
Well, other than it's disgusting, I can't think of.
Yeah, it's I actually based this story on a friend of mine who had a friend who something like this happened to her, and it's just struck me as really odd that, you know, something like this would happen. But this is the whole thing of coercive control. It's easier for the person to do that than to you know, start a fight, or you know, the abuser typically makes it easier to comply than to disagree. Yeah, exactly. Forcing him to wear something and saying it's just for him. You see, it's all about him. He doesn't care about what she wants. And so, yeah, it's just another subtle, maybe not so subtle. But then again, once you're in that type of relationship, it's just another thing to deal with.
The irony is that it's his self-esteem that's the problem.
Yes, exactly. And that's another thing too. Abusers want to make it look like they have the perfect life, you know, that everything's fine. And the image that they present outside the home is often quite different than the image or what is happening inside the home, which that's another reason why it's difficult to identify. Okay, so one thing to help when you encounter difficult people is to pay attention to how you feel. And if possible, a journal about your feelings. Journaling helped me a lot, especially when my children were young. I was journaling. I actually bought a journal to journal about the things that they were doing. And then at one point I realized I started journaling about my feelings. And so I journaled about how I was walking on eggshells. I felt controlled. I felt trapped, but I didn't realize it at the time. I only noticed it like 15 years later when I started to think again about what was happening in my marriage. I went back and I read that and I was shocked that I had written those words, but I didn't identify that as being problematic. So for me, and my therapist also recommend, if you're trying to identify something that's happening in your life, to try and journal about your feelings. Because how you feel around others is the most important thing to consider. And frequently, this is the only way you can identify emotional abuse. Like you'll feel like if someone says a comment to you that you don't like, you'll feel it like in your chest or your stomach. And so if you pay attention to that, that will help you identify things that don't feel good for you. Okay, so I have another video. This one is also from the UK. I'll put on the closed caption. And at the beginning, you'll see the woman walking on eggshells, and you might not be able to hear the sound, but as soon as the conversation starts, you'll hear the conversation. So I'm just going to pull up that video now.
Oh, lovely.
I love you. You've been doing all right.
I tidied up, I've not stopped. I've just sat.
Got the lamp. Dust all over that. Get it sorted. You doing?
My sister.
You really get on to that when we're having lunch.
I've not seen her in ages.
Go on then, let's spoil it. Go on. I'm sorry. You daft cow. Why have you bought all this expensive junk? I'll have to give you less money next time. Can't do anything like, can you? Yeah, Tom. Your mother's dressed like a clown. You should see it. It's classic, Liz. The only thing she's missing is a red nose. I'll start calling her Krusty from now on. No. I messaged your dad. Told him can't make his birthday. Can't be bothered with all your gang ignoring me. Good stars. Get these cobwebs cleaned up. Wake up, you lazy pig. Looks ridiculous. Get up. Think about it before you say anything. Why do you make me do these things? You're not going anywhere. You're staying here. You're staying here. You're staying here.
That was me, stuck in a cycle of abuse day after day, walking on eggshells in my own home. I reached out, I got the support I needed to leave him, and you can too.
Okay, I'm just gonna stop sharing and come back to my presentation. Okay, so does anyone have any comments or how you felt when you saw the mistreatment? How did you feel towards the man? How did you feel towards the woman? Do you have any thoughts?
I clearly didn't like their relationship, but there were some points that he made that I, as a perfectionist, would think that's okay. The lampshade's not right. Should be fixed.
Oh, okay.
It's hard to draw the line when, when it's about order and, cleaning and, not doing your part, for instance, if you sat home all day and he came from work. So it's just interesting that I see that. I, of course, do not like him at all and think he's awful.
Yes, yeah. I mean, because he gives her flowers and that he says he loves her, but then he says mean things to her. So like it's always a message of, oh, you think everything's fine and then it's not. But you see how for the lampshade, he was critical of her cleaning. Like it wasn't up to his standards. Even though like we couldn't see a problem with it. Is it really dirty or is he just being difficult about it? And so that's another thing about coercive control. It's really it's between the couple. It's tailored between the abuser and the victim. And so the abuser will do things to the victim that they feel they can get away with that particular person based on both of their personalities. Is there any other comments about
Well, and keeping her away from her family is, or, just because he didn't want to go didn't mean she couldn't go.
right?
So I'm trying to think I would have killed him.
I know I showed this video to someone else and they said the same thing.
Yeah, there would have been a rolling pin going around.
But it's interesting how he flipped it. He made it sound like they don't like me. So he gave a reason that is back to, why would I go somewhere where I'm not liked?
Mm-hmm.
So
But I mean,
that's
is that
definitely
true?
manipulation.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. But is he making that up? Like, is it really true?
Well, I don't believe they probably, I believe they don't like him.
Yeah, you're probably right. Yeah, yeah, that's true.
So,
Yeah.
so of course, that's what he's going to say, and a wife's going to say, "You're right. Why would we go somewhere where you're not liked?"
Yeah, no,
It's
that's
a very
a good,
creative reason. It's a very creative reason.
yeah, and that's a very good point that you make. The woman's very empathetic and sensitive. Yes. Yeah, and most people, well, a lot of people would care about their home and making it look nice, Yeah, I agree with that for sure.
So it's a fine line. That's, I think, what's difficult.
It is. It's a very fine line, and even it's even myself, after like I ended up getting counseling at the women's shelter in my area, and even I was there getting counseling and I still had a hard time believing that that's what I had experienced. So it's very, very hard to identify. But I feel like if you pay attention to how you feel, you're going to feel that you're not being treated properly. So I think that definitely will help.
And what about the crossover with NPD? The whole narcissist personality disorder, because a lot of the comments you're making overlap with NPD.
Yes, for sure. And definitely on websites that I research, they use a lot of that, referring to narcissistic abuse and things like that. But at the shelter where I received counseling and a lot of the readings, they don't talk about the abuser per se, because the abuser could be a narcissist, a sociopath, a psychopath, or none of those. But the point to pay attention to is the fact that they abused you. So it was kind of like, don't focus on diagnosing him, even though that was one of the things that I tried to look at to see if I could see if James was a narcissist or not, to help me figure things out. But in the end, you just know that you've been abused or mistreated. And so I was advised to not even think anything about what his troubles are.
Okay, that's a good point.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so have a little quiz. 8 questions. It's very short. So I'll read through the questions and then we can go through the answers together. Okay, so and you can just jot down your answers, or if you feel like it. So victims of abuse are always women. True or false?
That's false.
anyone can be a victim.
That's true. Yes. What we'll do though is jot that down, because then I'm going to go through the answers. So let's do it. We'll go through the 8 questions and then I'll come back and answer them. So let's move on to number 2. Domestic violence happens only in low income families. True or false? So just jot down your answer. Giving someone the silent treatment is abusive. True or false? It's a woman's duty to provide sex to her partner, even if she is not in the mood. True or false? Abusers don't know what they are doing. They just lose control. True or false? Making a woman feel guilty for spending money in general or on herself can be a form of abuse. True or false? If the relationship was that bad, she would leave. True or false? Coercive control can happen at work or with friends or parents. True or false? Okay, so I'm just going to move my slide over. Okay, so yes, someone mentioned victims of abuse are always women. That's false. 1 in 6 to 7 men and 1 in 4 women will be a victim of domestic abuse in their lifetime. I also have a reference for anyone who's interested for men. It's from the UK because they're much more advanced with coercive control sharing of information than we are here in North America. So it's mankind.org.uk. And I have a little video to show. I'm just gonna, this is about James and Thomas. This video was made in Canada, so the lag is not, it's not that bad. So let me just load up that video. Share.
Wait, see amor. Hi, babe. Hey, what's up? You know what's up. No, I don't. The dishes? Tomas, you didn't do them. There's a pile of dishes in the sink. I'm sorry, I had to be here really early, you know? I didn't, they have all these, Yeah, there are protocols here too. And then who should come over but my dad and drops by and sees this? How is he? Not great. He looked at this pile of filthy dishes like he wanted to puke. I'm sorry, okay? And I had to explain to him that my husband, who I thought was perfect, just left them. Sorry, it was so early. I had to eat and run. Yeah, every time something goes wrong, you just say, I'm sorry. Yeah. Look, I will do them when I get home, okay? I promise. Welcome home. Now, I'm working. Yeah, you don't need a job. I pay for you. I take care of you. You are so lucky I married you. Claro que sim. I mean, we're both lucky, no? Yeah, well, some of us are luckier than others. You didn't give me a permanent residency card to stay in like the most beautiful country in the world. It's also very cold here, no? Listen, my boss is going to be here soon. I have to go. Jesus, Tomas, your boss is not paying your rent. Please come home and do these dishes right now. You want me to leave work? James. Don't you have a break in like 10 minutes? Yeah, but... Yeah, but what? I want to take my break. And I like clean dishes. James, please. Please, baby, I don't understand why you can't be a good sport. Why are you always fighting me about this stuff? I don't want to fight. Your tone, Tomas?
I'm not a bad person because I like things clean. Because there are rules we have set up in order to have this house.
I know, but sometimes it's just hard for me to function in the morning when I have to.
Well, like I said, my dad came over and looked like he wanted to puke.
I didn't know he was gonna come by.
I told you he was coming.
No, you said he dropped.
You know what? I can't stand this. If I ended things, what would your status be? On a boat back to Portugal. I do all of this for you. And I'm not trying to be mean. It's just, it's not fair. So I have to go anyway.
Okay, so does anybody have any comments about that video that we just saw? Oh.
Well, I've noticed that all of that James does is trying to make Thomas feel in debt with him. And in a part of it, he even pretends to care about him. He says, you don't need to work because I'll provide you anything. And then he rebukes him repeatedly and saying, and he blames him for not being as perfect as he thought he would be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And he makes it sound, James makes it sound so normal, his request, as if, you know, this is an everyday expectation of behavior. And so I think that's why Thomas is having a hard time, is that James is selling him on this, you know, what he should be doing. And so it's very confusing for Thomas. And it looks like Thomas does feel bad, which is exactly what James wants him to feel. Yeah, the indebted, exactly. The threat of holding the green card over his head to make him adjust his behavior. Yeah, exactly, because he's in Canada. And so he says, you know, like, if we're not together, then what's going to happen to you? You're going to end up back in Portugal. So, and also he says, James says, I'll take care of you. You don't need to work. And so he's actually putting a lot of stuff on Thomas. Even though he did say he thought, James said he thought his partner Thomas was perfect, but then, you know, he criticizes him for so many other things. So yeah, there was a lot of different things going on in that video, but all that to say, you know, victims are not always women, and they can happen between any type of partners. Okay, so let's go on to question number 2. Domestic violence happens only in low-income families. That's false. Domestic violence happens in all kinds of families, rich and poor, urban, suburban, and in every racial, religious, and age group. Okay, so we'll go on to question number 3. Giving someone the silent treatment is abusive. That's true. If a person uses silence to punish someone, it is a form of abuse. And also, like, if the abuser refuses to listen to his partner or share himself with her, their ideas, their feelings, it's like you can't really connect with a person. And so that can go on for years. And so being with an abuser who doesn't share themselves can be very lonely. Okay, so number 4, it's a woman's duty to provide sex to her partner, even if she is not in the mood. Okay, so that's false. Sexual abuse involves forcing, coercing, or demanding sexual acts. Widely held myths about roles in relationships perpetuate the false belief that non-consensual sex does not constitute real sexual abuse. So, I mean, when you're in a relationship with someone, I would say particularly women, maybe they feel obligated to provide sex kind of on demand, if you will. But that's not true. It's not true. So no one should ever feel forced into doing any type of sexual act they do not want to do. Okay, so number 5, abusers don't know what they're doing. They just lose control. That's false. Conjugal violence is a way to control another person and not the result of a loss of control. The perpetrator uses several strategies in order to dominate the victim and make sure she does not leave him. And that's the whole thing. It's not a loss of control. It's very controlled, which is why typically you don't see that type of abuse out in the public. It's pretty much hidden within the household many times. So, and that's why you can see that it's totally being controlled. Making the woman feel guilty for spending money in general or on herself can be a form of abuse. That's true. By making the woman feel guilty about spending on herself, she stops doing it to reduce the conflict and outburst by the abuser. So again, he gets what he wants. The woman doesn't spend money, and it's one less thing for him to have to, I guess, deal with or discuss. I have a short little video on that, so let me just pull that one up.
Why don't you answer your phone? I need some smokes.
I'm sorry, I must have accidentally put it on silent. Silly me.
Yeah, well, what's the damage? Oh, you went a bit overboard, don't you think?
Well, it's our anniversary tomorrow. I thought I'd make your favourite meal, porterhouse mash and gravy.
Yeah, I give you a budget for a reason. I didn't spend all my life working so you can go out and blow it on one meal. And porterhouse? Come on, are you crazy? I don't even like porterhouse.
But I thought you liked porterhouse last
I
time.
know what I like and I know what I don't like. You're remembering things wrong, that's all. Now give me my card.
Okay, so in that video, we see the woman spending money for a special celebration, and then her husband chastises her for spending money on something that she thought he liked. So, and then he takes away the credit card. So I don't know if anybody has any comments about that.
I think that could be very serious. Sorry, the comment that he made that, you know, you're forgetting.
Mm-hmm.
You think about that, you know, a few comments like that, then the idea of dementia comes down the line. It could really affect her someday.
Yeah, for sure. When they tell you that you're remembering things wrong or it didn't happen, you really start to doubt your memory and your mind. Exactly. So, and it doesn't even have to happen all that often, you know, just periodically is enough to make you start doubting yourself. Yeah, okay, let's see. Okay, so if the relationship was that bad, she would leave. That's false. It can be really hard for a woman to leave an abusive partner because like any other relationship, it may have started off with falling in love. The abuser might have been really kind, attentive, you know, everything might have started off really nice. And so the gradual change is difficult. And it's also easier to comply than disobey because you think it's just one little thing here. Okay, he just calls me a name every now and then, or a little comment. And so it's because it happens in little bits and pieces mixed in with good times, it's very hard to see. The woman may also believe him when he says he's sorry, that he won't do it again. She may also be frightened for her life or that of her children, and she may not have anywhere to go or any access to money. And leaving is the most dangerous time for a woman trying to get out of an abusive relationship. Okay, so coercive control can happen at work or with friends or parents. That's true. Pathology in its many forms is not rare. 1 in 5 people has a personality disorder, like we were discussing before, the narcissist or sociopath types of disorders. And 1 in 100 has a form of psychopathy. And you have probably already encountered someone with a personality disorder But for most people, it isn't spotted until the harm is done. So like there are people out there with, disorders, and you just have to be, again, paying attention to your surroundings and how you feel. And in terms of coercive control happening at work, my brother-in-law last year had a new boss, and he was treating him very disrespectfully, unreasonable demands, aggressive speaking towards him. And so my brother-in-law started to Google, bosses or, behavior at the workplace. And he actually discovered that he was being treated abusively at work. And there's actually a website here in Quebec that you can go to if that's something that you would need to know. So with the guidelines of what constitutes abuse in the workplace. Okay, so just so we have enough time to do my last exercise, I'm going to skip over that. I wanted to get to the warning signs for abusive behavior. So he gets seriously too quickly about the relationship. Like he starts making plans for long-term things early on in the relationship. He is self-centered, so everything is about him. He doesn't care about your opinions. Nothing is ever his fault. He blames others for, anything that could possibly go wrong. He speaks disrespectfully about his former partners. He has double standards, so meaning he can do things, but you can't. He has very traditional ideas about what men and women should do. He is controlling, so he doesn't ever consider your opinions. And also he might intimidate you when he is angry. Okay, so, and in terms of boundaries, a lot of people have a hard time saying no to requests and demands, and it's especially difficult after you've been in an abusive relationship. But, you're totally entitled to say no to things that you don't want to do. So you can say no in a variety of ways, and here's just 10 examples. So you can say, stop it. No, thank you. I don't want to. That hurts me or my feelings. It's not what I want to do. I don't like that. That makes me uncomfortable. I don't feel like doing that right now. Please don't. And the most simple one is just to say no. And you're perfectly entitled to say that. You have to respect, your boundaries and how you feel. So always pay attention to, again, how you feel about doing something. And if you really don't want to, it's perfectly fine to say no. Okay, so I wanted to get to the personal reflection. So I'd like you to do, I'll give you like 10 minutes to think of a difficult experience. It could be with, a partner or a friend or a parent or a colleague, anybody. And if you don't have something you think is really difficult, maybe just something, odd or unusual perhaps. And so describe that situation, like write down what happened and then write down how you felt about it, or maybe what you felt about it at the time, and maybe now you feel differently, but just experiment with journaling about an experience and how you feel about it. So I'll give you 10 minutes to do that, and then we'll come back. I don't know if you necessarily want to share how much you want to share, but maybe you want to share just the name the feeling that you felt during that experience. So yeah, so go ahead and start a little journaling exercise, and we'll come back in 10 minutes. Okay, so how's everybody doing? Everybody pretty much wrapped that up?
Heather, I just added a comment in the chat that given the sensitive nature of some of the experiences, perhaps if people would like to share during this group, but then would like it not to be part of the YouTube video, we would remove it when we edit it. So people can just send me a message in private. And this is specifically for this sharing part.
This part, okay. Okay. Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Carmen. Very interesting. just reading what you wrote. Yeah, guilt is pretty common. I think generally maybe for women, thinking that they have to make everything okay for everybody else. And sometimes they think about themselves, secondhand. So guilt is not uncommon.
I felt guilty because I felt as if I had mistaken his intentions. I felt as if he just wanted to be friendly, but actually he was aiming for something else. And the fact that I didn't give him what he expected me to give him didn't make me feel guilty. Actually, what I felt guilty about was that I was being rude to him.
Oh, okay. But I mean, you were just setting your own boundaries, which is perfectly fine.
Yes, I was setting my boundaries because he was almost an unknown person to me.
Okay.
So
Okay.
boundaries were necessary, and at the moment I felt as if they weren't, as if I was exaggerating what I was setting.
Okay. Wow. Yeah, but never feel guilty for setting boundaries. It's hard, but yes, definitely. Thank you for that. Thank you.
Thank you for listening.
I have something to share too.
Okay.
Am I on? It was an experience that I had. I was about 7 months pregnant, and the church in our area was having a bazaar where you can go in, and they advertised a lot of knitting wear for babies, like, booties and sweaters and stuff. So before doing that, I cleaned my whole house from top to bottom, mopped, dusted, everything was spick and span. And I went out to do this. When I came back and I opened the front door, there was a haze. All I could see was a haze. And I thought, is this smoke? But I couldn't smell smoke. And I thought, what's going on? And then it dawned on me what it was. It was drywall dust that was settling everywhere, in every nook and cranny, everywhere, on the crib, in the bedrooms. The floor was this chalk, full of chalk white, the floor that I'd cleaned that morning. And I realized, it dawned on me what he had done. He had tore out, my husband was in the trades, and he had tore out, my then husband was in the trades. He had tore out a wall, an outside wall to the house to build an addition. But I was never made aware. He had never told me his plans. He never told me that he was doing this. He just did it. And all the anger that was in me was unbelievable, because it's like my feelings didn't count. And then I got called the dumb cunt because I don't appreciate anything he's done. And he was only doing this to make the house bigger and better for us and to accommodate the new baby. Well, so my feelings at that point, I suddenly negated what I was feeling, because I thought, oh, he's right. I'm being so unappreciative. I mean, this is what he does for a living. And instead of me being grateful, I'm like chopping his head off. So I suddenly felt like he was right and I was wrong. But what he should have done and didn't do was, put up a barrier so that the living quarters didn't get full of debris and dust, because we still had to live in that house. So the feeling that I'm describing here was, I suddenly, mine didn't count anymore. That's how much the coercive abuse that I was going through. I realized now that I'm older. I mean, after 17 years of marriage to him, I finally left. But it took me that long to figure out, and nobody saw it. Nobody, because all they saw was, this man is giving you all this, he's in the trades, look at how beautiful your house is. To get to make it beautiful, I had to undergo that. And the fact that my feelings didn't count, he didn't even say, should we build an addition? It's going to cost money, so that was never factored in. And I just felt like I blamed myself after, in the end, thinking, he's doing this, it's going to be so nice when it's done. Why did I snap at him? And then I would get the silent treatment, and it would go for weeks. So yeah, go ahead. You can do whatever you want with that. It's I don't keep anything in anymore. I share it with everybody.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And definitely, I mean, there's a bunch of things in there that he could have done to improve the
Mhm.
situation by asking you, discussing it with you. And I also find it interesting that you were probably the one that had to clean up the mess.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. That's right. That.
Yeah.
So I have to start over. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's why I thought it was interesting. You started with the fact that your house was totally clean and you were not going that long. And, you know, so yeah. So thank you so much for sharing that. Yeah.
You're welcome.
So I'm happy to go. Or
Go ahead. Go ahead. Yeah.
well, that's what I wrote. It's not very long. And it's just really about body image and complicity of friends, I guess, and how things get normalized. Oh, they called him Captain Poison Tongue. He fell for my aura. Pink, he said. How could I argue with my aura? I was full-bodied. His friends called me FCFM, fat chick from Montreal. I waited decades before I was the thin one, essentially the same weight, normal, and the boys had all packed on a stone or two. Oh, I said, you sure have gone full out to make me feel at home. I'd moved out west. You all are FGFEs, fat guys from Edmonton. Why did I tolerate this insult? My uncle once said jokingly, oh, Kathy, don't stand there, you'll break my deck. I maybe 160, 165, an athlete, played rugby, soccer, football, running, swimming, skiing. Was I ever thrilled when they posted weights for women hockey players in the 140s, 150s, 160s, 170s, all fit, not fat? How did I feel? Insulted, offended, ashamed, conditioned to taking it, you know, being tough, hurt, like I deserved it. I still am shocked when I look in a mirror and I'm basically normal. They're pretty much the same size. So yeah, just like in how men sort of like that male gaze, you know, and how we're supposed to look a certain way. And then I like the way I look pretty much, but, and I think there was the complicity of the friends, you know, anyway. So
yeah. Yeah. No, thank you for sharing that. That's definitely a big issue for women is body image. You know,
Yeah.
you see the ads, you see everything, you have to have the perfect body. Otherwise men do feel entitled to like kind of pick it apart. And it's really hard when it's always out there to have the confidence to believe that your body is just fine as it is. So it's probably an ongoing issue for women in general, but you recognize it now, and it seems that you're happy now. So I'm happy to hear that, and thank you so much for sharing your story.
Thank you. Thanks.
Okay, well, I think
I have to say something about the body image and how comments affected. So because the person I was talking about before even tried to make me feel guilty for being fat and for being masculine, and he even said that I was wearing boyish clothes because I fear men, and that I needed to be feminine to be acceptable socially. And he even made allegations about my gender and identity. And so I even felt guilty because of that, but I've never followed his advice because what I felt was that I needed to scare him, so I disobeyed him on purpose.
oh, wow.
I felt empowered because of that.
Well, that's good. That's good. I'm glad that you stuck to your principles and did what you thought was right for you. It's probably might have been a little scary, but I think very strong of you to be able to do that. So thank you for sharing that story.
Thank you for listening.
Okay, I think Alicia, do we need to go on to questions?
Well, we have time for questions. So I think if you want to close, do what you need to do, and then if people have questions, we can take a little bit more time.
Okay, I just wanted to quickly just give a summary that coercive control is a repeated or continuous pattern of mistreatment that occurs over a period of time, and it may not include physical violence. All types of violence have very similar consequences on its victims. Abusers know what they are doing. The objective is to control their victim. It happens in all kinds of families. Everyone has the right to be treated with respect. It's always acceptable to say that you don't want to do something, and always pay attention to how you feel. The actions of others impact you, and you might hear yourself saying, "Who does that?" Or "That's really odd," or "That makes me feel bad or weird." So pay attention to those thoughts that you're having. It'll help you navigate people with difficult behaviors. Okay, so I just wanted to summarize that, and we can let's see, we'll go, I'll stop sharing, and then we could do the questions. Stop sharing. Okay, so if there's any questions, please go ahead. Oh, I'm just going to read some of the. Oh, wow. Okay, so if there's any questions? Comments? Okay, wow. Well, thank you everybody for your participation. As I mentioned, it's very important for me to get this information out there, especially to help women identify if they're experiencing abuse, and at least if you know that what you're dealing with, it helps, because when you don't know, sometimes you feel a little crazy. And so I just think that it's important to get this information out there. So I hope you never have to really use this information, but maybe you'll be able to recognize it in friends or family, and just to help women in general to be more independent out in the world. So thank you all very much for your participation today.
Heather, if there's, for instance, I added in the chat the link to your story in Acenti.
Okay.
I should have known, that's the title. And if you have anything else that you want to add, feel free. But unless anybody has any other comments or questions or concerns, I will just do my little closing bit. Okay. All right. So thanks very much, Heather, for such an informative workshop. And thanks to everyone here for being here and also for sharing. I'd like to invite you to join our next workshop, Workshop 6, which will be on Friday, October 20th at 2 p.m. on Zoom, and that is Finding Your Voice, Words, Images, and Performance with Anna Camilleri. You can go to the Acenti site to find out about other workshops coming up. I believe there's also another one on October 27th. I am adding the link to the workshops in the chat. And thank you all for being here today. Acenti's Workshops to Express Creativity, Engaging Canadian Seniors is made possible through the financial support of Employment and Social Development Canada as part of the New Horizons Seniors Program. Thank you all, and hope to see you next time.